What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the highlight of my week and hopefully your week. We are doing a monarchy discussion. So I got a lot of different brilliant minds here. So I hope you guys are excited. I just got a soundboard too, so I wanted to pick up. Thank you. So, well, that'll some random sounds will be coming off in the show. But go follow me at Kojak Podcast, and we'll just get right into it. So, Kyle, we got Conspiracy Kyle. Kyle, how the hell are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. It's been a while.
Nice. Yes, it has. And we'll just do is where can everybody find you? Just so we'll
You
start
can find
that
me
off
on Twitter and Instagram. It's conspiracy_Kyle, and it's conspiracy with a K.
All right. Nice. I'll put all your links in the show notes. John, welcome. Everyone knows who you are, but if for some chance someone just stumbled here, where can they find you?
My name is John Brissett. You can find me. We've read the documents. We've_read on Twitter, and yeah, I guess that's really about it. And sometimes on the Mount Rushmore of broadcasting here on Kojak. So.
Hell yeah! And loyalist, you've been on my show before, but just so everybody, introduce yourself.
Yeah. I guess I'm the loyalist, or some people call me the loyalist. Funny. I don't care if people make that joke. How about you can find me. Let's see about me. Okay, I run the Star Spangled Kingdom YouTube channel. I'm on Gab at the Star Spangled Kingdom. If there's a bunch of stuff you don't, I would suggest not following me on Gab because that's where I don't care what I post, so I just post long rants when I'm really up at 5 a.m, drinking way too many energy drinks, coffee, and every stimulant known to man, a legal stimulant. And
it's a good distinction.
I guess I'm most popular for the thing that really started me off is I was always planning on doing like I guess so you say like a right-wing show because I wanted to do it for a while. I started creating right-wing content. So I just made a video called like Defense of Absolutism, got 200 views. Nice. I started a show with I was looking for a socialist who was a monarchist. I started with 2, it grew into 3, and now we average about 100 to 200 views and about 10 to 7 live viewers. You can find us every Saturday at 5 p.m. EST at the Star Spangled Kingdom live show. It's not a live stream; it's a live show. It's distinctive.
Right.
I guess that's you can. I'm gonna just a bit more shilling. You should follow my co-host's blog, which is the 27th most popular Orthodox blog in the entire world.
Nice.
GodKingandNation.blog. He's a lot of blogs about theology. I have never read all of his blogs. He always says, like, how'd you know I didn't know? It's like, I don't read all your blogs. There's a lot of them. Yeah.
Perfect, dude. And so you guys have seen this guy on my show before. Scott, he's got no dog in the race, but I brought him. He's the one of the best Bible guys. He married a pastor's daughter. So I know Kyle and John are probably nervous when they hear that. So Scott, welcome. Thanks for coming. How you doing, dude?
Gentlemen, it's a pleasure and honor. And ready to get going.
Awesome. And so Scott, I brought Scott on because I was telling him about my debate with you guys, and I sent him I Googled like 3 days ago, what verses in the Bible about monarchies? And so I read them all. I go, well, shit, I can't argue it. What am I going to argue? And so I talked to Scotty. And so he's going to add an interesting viewpoint that I'd like to hear. You guys are all biblical better than me. So John, we'll start off with the Bible stuff because Scott has to head out, and then we'll get into like the stuff that I can actually add something to. So why don't you start with why because obviously this is, if we want a Christian nation, we're going to listen to the Bible. What does the Bible say about that goes against, or what does it say about monarchy?
Okay, so monarchy in and of itself, as far as a earthly king or earthly ruler over a nation, wasn't biblically set up by God. Both, as Conspiracy Kyle brought up in Twitter, both Deuteronomy and 1 Samuel 8 and 9. God warned Israel, and God knew that Israel was going to want to have a king, like the other pagan nations around it. And so because of that, God had warned them exactly what would happen if they chose to take a king instead of, when you look at the different variations of ruling structures within the Old Testament, you have God the Father and Jesus Christ. And then, as if you believe a little bit of what Michael Heisner has written, you could say that Heiser has written. You could say that there was also a divine council, and from there was a rebellion of the divine council that was under God and Jesus. And that's where, of course, you had Satan and the rebellion of the 1/3 of the angels and so forth and so on, which then led to various principalities that we are still at war with today. We're war against the powers of principalities that Paul had alluded to. And so there are those divisions that people, as far as both the pagan nations and Israel and of itself, kept committing adultery against God the Father by continuously worshiping or making idols, should I say, which they were empty idols, obviously, as Paul alluded to, of these fallen divine council members. And so originally, depending on your interpretation of Genesis of the sons of God, of whether they were leaders of nations throughout the world, or they were the quote unquote fallen angels, which I believe them to be, as both the Bible alludes to and the apostolic fathers allude to, is of that interpretation that was later changed by the Roman pagan Catholic Church into the sons of God being kind of like earthly rulers during that time period. But there was that kind of governmental structure, at least that was supposed to be, of God always ruling, of having authority, and Jesus ruling with God, of having authority. But man kind of sharing some of the duties, and also divine council sharing some of the duties too as well. Of course, that did not happen because divine council had free will, man had free will. The fallen heart of man comes out later, okay, and in doing so, because of that, because of the original sin, put forth by Adam and Eve, and the eating of the fruit of the knowledge of true and good and evil, these governmental systems became corrupt, at least from that standpoint, from an earthly sense. So the warnings that God had given in Deuteronomy and in 1 Samuel was exactly what we even saw during the book of Judges, when these leaders of Israel, these judges, majority of them, especially later on in the book, they're shown to have flaws. They're shown to be flawed people, as people and of themselves are flawed, and have a wicked heart. And so in doing so, they fail, and don't live up to completely, what both for them to judge the people of Israel and above itself, and for what God ultimately would want of them. And the same can be said biblically of Saul, who was the king that Israel had chosen, which later David is a man after God's own heart. But David of himself, because he is a man, also committed sin as well. Of course, the major one being listed is Bathsheba, right? And his lust of Bathsheba, and which he did later repent of. And so, as we can see, and as Conspiracy Kyle has brought up, and I think we have the actual statistics, a majority of the kings in the Old Testament were wicked. They did not serve God. David would be an example. Hezekiah would be another example of a king that was righteous, that served God. But majority of them did not, because of the wicked, fallen heart of man. And so, yes, Scott.
But isn't that the point? Like, don't you feel like they're written in the Bible to be proven? Because, like, what Jack and I were discussing and I saw the two verses that were brought to my attention. I think, Kyle, you tweeted them out. It's the Deuteronomy and the Samuel that you've already referenced, right? And you've already mentioned. So you're well versed enough to know there are no good people, right?
Yes.
Like, if you read the Bible,
there are none righteous, not one.
Exactly. So, but in both examples that you were given, it says key phrases that I don't know if are getting lost in translation or where I'm misleading. But I think Jack brought me on because as soon as he sent me the Samuel verse, which I don't know if we can pull up, but it says something along the lines of exactly what you're saying. You cannot bring on a worldly king. But that's the point in general. It's not saying do not bring on a king. It is saying if the person you're putting in power values, let's use the, and it's interesting to me that you guys use these verses because in my opinion, the argument is in the verses you're using. So I have the Deuteronomy one pulled up, and in it, it says, do not place a foreigner over you, one who is not an Israelite. The king, moreover, must not acquire great numbers of horses for himself or make the people return to Egypt to get more of them. For the Lord has told you, you are not to go back that way again. So in my opinion, the Bible is telling you, listen to God. God will find the right person.
But later, though, however, I would argue, Scott, that when Samuel warns, because God pretty much, tells him to tell Israel this, he takes it a step further and says, the king will take your horses. He will take your servants. He will take your laborer.
I just find because I once again think the Bible is letting you know the core value of it is do not put your trust in a man.
No, 100%. Yeah, I agree. 100%.
I would say, and oftentimes you need to take context and use it full circle. So when you guys stop the Deuteronomy verse at it stops at 20, but I don't understand where it talks about when he takes the throne of his kingdom, he is to write for himself on a scroll a copy of this law, taken from that of the Levitical priests. He is to be with him, and he is to read it to all the days of his life, so that he may learn to revere the Lord his God and follow carefully all the words of his laws and these decrees. That's the answer, is if the person appointed, I told Jack I'm going to jump off because I don't understand the opposite of the argument. Because if you're saying do not put your faith behind one person, your argument then, I'm assuming, is let's put it in the people or multiple people.
No, I think the argument really isn't for like a republic democracy versus a monarchy. I think this debate is really just I think a lot of us agree that there's really no pure form of government that's going to really adhere to God's law.
Yep.
And I will say, even, like you mentioned, I agree that it says in the scripture, it sets up what you should and should not do. And I think the problem is that even the ones that were quote unquote good even broke a lot of these ones as well. We always think of King David, King Solomon, but King Solomon was one, he acquired mass sums of wealth. He acquired mass wives towards the end of his life. So even someone that walked in the ways of God in his teachings, like we've been saying, it's still a flawed human. There's still going to be issues with it. But I think to your point, Scott, while me and John are saying that, let's say 75% of those kings were evil. I will say that when I ran the numbers, like the 25% of ones that were really good had long reigns and did reign over long periods of prosperity for the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. So it's really like when it comes to kings, there's no middle ground, right? Yeah. They're evil, and they're driving people towards wickedness, or they're good for a time, or they're good for their entire lives. It's there's no law of averages when it comes to kings, I guess, is my point. I'm a numbers guy, right? So there's really no, when you average it out, you really can't, because there's really no median. It's a negative 50 or a plus 50. So I think that's kind of our that was kind of my point with it.
And
No, I agree with that. Yes.
And I appreciate that because that clarifies kind of what you guys are going after. But it all boils down to, in my opinion, the group of ears it's falling on, right? Because we're seeing it today. This message in general is getting lost. Like it boils down to morality, right? Because we're going to have to come to the agreement not everyone on this earth will convert to Christianity, right? But if we can align the people under someone who has like these concepts to a boiled science that we truly trust, because us in America, we're practically doing it. Like we celebritize our presidential candidates so much that like it goes back to when Trump was in office. He couldn't name a book in the Bible if he tried, but like these people have this false conception that he does. So like his actions are what's going to take us there. So my only input to this was that it's coming back to what you're saying, that there is no answer. It's going to come down to trusting either a person or a group of people. And I think if the country were to be more like-minded in our core values, that would lead to an opportunity to selecting one truly great person. We can't decide it, and we're picking our celebrities and a half-dead guy because our values are so separated right now. So we have no good example right now to point to. But if we have a bright and shining star in office or as a king, then you can rely that upon, I don't know, the biblical values in which we're talking about.
But I would say you would never reach that. I mean, actually, of us even having this debate is some sort of intellectual masturbation in some forms.
Hey,
I mean, I gotta be real.
Hey, speak for yourself. Well, may I give my opening statement?
Yes, you can.
Okay, a lot of this concept that these were good monarchs, there was bad monarchs in the Bible, but these are still God's anointed. In Samuel still says, I cannot harm Saul, he is still my Lord's anointed. A lot of these ideas that democracy is biblically relevant, or even like monarchy, the only form of government you can find in the Bible is monarchy, or you could say a form of theocracy. There's never reference to republicanism, liberalism, enlightenment era values. These ideas, and taken to the logical conclusions, are anti-Christian. We can see that the decline, and I don't even really need to reference the Bible because I don't think that there's any monarchist arguments can be found in the Bible. I think there's only pro-monarchist arguments.
I would argue
like
against that, but we can discuss that though.
John Chrysostom said, "Render unto, be obedient to Caesar, be obedient to your governors." Jesus even said, "Render unto Caesar those things that are Caesar's." If Christianity would take to the path where we would where they rebelled against the Roman Empire, where they rebelled against the Romans, Christianity would have been crushed on the vine. It would have never spread to the world. The world would have never been saved. But because Christians obeyed Jesus' teachings and rendered on to the rulers, the monarchs, what is the monarchs? They saw the errors of their ways. Constantine wasn't told by God, by this symbol you will free people. By this symbol you will conquer. So either Constantine is fundamentally wrong and is not hearing the word of God when he is victorious and stops the persecution of Christians, or God is just saying, whatever. And this is
well, there were some Christians that were still persecuted even after Constantine by the Roman Empire.
There was some Christians, but the major stopping point was Constantine. He was given a vision by God, by this symbol, and he was given a vision of a cross. You will conquer, and by that symbol he conquered. So the will of God is never by republics. There's never any Republican people who believe in democracy who say, by this symbol God has given to us, we will form a democracy. We can see that everything they come to this conclusion that monarchy is bad through their own individualist, complete and utter.
So persecution of Christians didn't pick up during Julian the Apostate when they tried to rebuild the Third Temple?
Again, God struck down almost most Roman empires. Well, the argument of a pro-monarchist Christian is not even that monarchs have to be good. We don't believe that monarchs are inherently good rulers. We believe that it is the form of government we should follow, and you should be obedient to your ruler. And it's not to say that you should blindly let yourself be persecuted. And Saul was still God's anointed.
That's true.
And sure, and Samuel could still not harm him. And God, by the anointing of kings, princes, we don't never find a reference to anybody besides kings, princes. We find some judges, but nothing like that in the Bible. So,
but I would say that all the kings in the Bible though weren't anointed though. There's a lot of usurpers, just like through history, because I think that style of government, brings about, well, crap, all I need to do is kill this one guy, take out his family, and then it's me.
It's not even true. Plenty of people have tried to do that and failed miserably. It's the concept that you could just kill the Tsar of Russia and then be the Tsar of Russia. There's so many bloodlines tied to that you will never exterminate great families of Europe. There's still Romanovs, there's still Habsburgs, there's still houses of Hohenzollern.
Right, but it still breeds violence, though. I guess is my point. Whether it's successful or not.
2 world wars were waged by a republic and a socialist country. The biggest world wars were waged on behalf. The Allies were a republic and a parliament and a parliamentary system where the king had very little power. And these wars are waged for pointless reasons, because these are wars by men who aren't godly. Like when St. John of Austria stood aboard his flagship and defended Christendom from Muslim invaders, he wasn't proclaiming that he will take anything or that this is for some noble cause. He was simply defending Europe and doing his Christian moral duty. You know what was not at Lepanto? No Republicans, no Democrats, no people who believe in these liberal enlightenment views, just Christian men defending the cross. And that's what princes were, before the Protestant Reformation, mainly did. There was a few wars, but most of the major coalition conflicts against satanic Muslims were by Christian rulers. And we can see that the reason Islam is ascendant and doesn't have a downward decline, well, in some places, Christianity is still very big in US, Poland, is because they never lost their monarcho theory and confidence in themselves and gave into this Enlightenment era really satanic belief. Like, I don't want to say they were satanic, but what it led to was this belief that one is above God. No one is above the laws of God and nature, as Gene Bowden points out in 6 Books of the Commonwealth, who was a very devout Catholic. And that statement is simply, you cannot put yourselves above the laws of God and nature, the basic fundamental laws of hierarchy and the basic fundamental laws of a nationhood. If God wanted a republic and wanted the Christians to form a republic or any of that, they would have formed a republic. But they didn't. They were loyal to the empire, or he would have sent the message, in the symbol you will conquer, to neo-Roman republicanists. He did not. He sent it to the emperor.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Loyalist. Let me ask you a quick question. Render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, render unto God's what is God's. The early apostolic church in the ante-Nicene church, let's say before Constantine, for example, they were within, if they were, within the Roman Empire, they, abided by the laws of the Roman Empire within reason. They wouldn't deny Jesus Christ, for example, or God the Father, or they wouldn't harm themselves or harm anybody else. Okay.
Correct.
And so they would follow the commandments that Jesus Christ had given us. Okay. But they would also separate themselves, right? They would separate themselves from the Roman government in and of itself, right? There was no, to my knowledge, any of Christians that had inserted themselves into Roman government, correct?
No, there was actually members of the government who were Christian. There was rulers who were Christian. There were governors who were Christian.
But as high as governors, there were.
There was some. there was some high-ranking military officials, and
They were converted, right, per se, or at least they became born again. Is how I would say it.
And that's the thing is that is what I would like to say, and the thing is I don't believe in conversion through violence. I think orthodoxy gets it right when we say strictly through argumentation and missionary law.
As a Baptist, I agree that as well.
Yeah,
too, yes.
that is my view, and I think that's how Christianity came to victory over trampling down evil.
Very much agree with you. Very much.
We trample down evil by arguing with it, but
by spreading the gospel, by spreading the good news,
the gospel,
by living as Christians.
Living as Christians, I think people are flawed people. But
yes.
The thing is, saying that we should spread the gospel, but saying that being said, the concept, and we look in the Bible, time and time again, we see that the majority of people are wicked. The majority of people are going against God, and there's a small cadre of people who are moral people.
The remnant, people that believe in God and serve God and trust God.
It's like something my priest said. It's like it would have been easy for me to be an Orthodox Christian in Constantinople in the 10th century. There's no threats really. Well, there's some threats, but like it's very simple. It's like I go to church, I go to work. It's hard to be in an age of persecution, but that being said, and that all being said, is that when we look at when Christianity has its downclines, it's all due to one factor. We can see the downcline of Christianity let's just say, I would say the 7th century to the 1800s. Christianity was on the upcline, and we see the downfall of Christianity in the 1900s and the late 1800s with the invention of mass media and really the spreading of mass democracies, that where people, it's not saying that you should force people to be moral, but when people are given this idea that you are above the words of God and the anointed of God, the monarchs, you sin into vice. And something that's really something should be pointed out. The most Christian country in the 1900s was Russia. In the 1900s, Russia was the most heavily Christian country. It was an absolute monarchy. A lot of the most Christian countries were neo-absolute monarchies or semi-absolute monarchies, where basically Democrats have no rule because they always implement the separation of church and state.
So you're arguing that Russia was more Christian than America?
At the time, America wasn't into its decline, which I don't view America. The revolution wasn't an anti-monarchical revolution. It was split between aristocratic Republicans and, you could say, neo-Stewardess.
Well, there were Baptists and Anabaptists like myself that didn't want to have nothing to do with it, and the Protestants put us to death.
It's really the that everyone was in favor or opposed. A lot of people don't give a fuck. That's my opinion. The vast majority of people don't really care one way or the other. They should care, but they don't. But it was split between men who believed in the divine right of George III to rule directly over the colonies, which was and that it was his royal prerogative as the head of the church, as and all of those things. And then the Republicanists.
But there was also a third branch that wanted to have to do with neither one of them.
Yeah. There's always the whatever types. That's just.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily classify them as that, but they were
like, you know what? There's always I'm sorry. No one has ever changed anything by being a centrist. Centrism is the lazy man's political.
No,
philosophy.
they weren't centrist. They were separating themselves. That's different.
Okay, look. That's the whole thing with like I don't like libertarians. Like Amish are the most successful libertarians ever. Because you know why? They don't even
Anabaptists, yes, that's true.
Yeah, Anabaptists, they don't even need to call themselves libertarians. They're just kind of like, we don't like the government. We don't want insurance.
They do pay taxes, though.
They pay taxes more just, and we're going to live in our Amish communities and just be so, and just shun anybody who's not us. and it's highly effective.
Okay, the shunning part's an issue, as we're called by the Great Commission.
Okay. Hey, I'm not Amish. Like I disagree with it. Yeah.
No, but I'm saying I do have some beliefs very similar to the
yeah,
Amish as
I
a
know.
Baptist and an Anabaptist. So
Yeah, I know. Anabaptists, even Anabaptists were monarchists. They literally declared, the early Anabaptists declared John of Leyden their king, and then took over the city of Munster. And
yeah, I'm talking about more from an American perspective.
Okay, well, they
they
decided that violence wasn't cool, probably because they got their asses kicked by most monarchs who thought that guy was kind of nuts.
they've been pushing violence wasn't cool before then, but
okay.
But all right, but see,
now the eternal Anabaptist speaks.
That is true. I mean, okay, so I'll say this. I have issues with monarchy, just like I have issues with republicanism, or what you term republicanism. Okay, in my opinion, I mean, I guess this kind of defeats the purpose of the debate, which is why it's more a discussion. And I think Kyle would agree with me on this.
Yeah.
Because men are fallen, I don't think there is a quote unquote perfect system of government. I do believe that there is.
Don't get me wrong. I don't either. Like, I'm not a utopian.
I do think that the only perfect system of government is when Jesus Christ returns in the millennial kingdom. Okay, like that's it. Like that's the standard and the only standard. Okay, but I again, for that to happen though, there's no like. This kind of makes this discussion like, because my argument would be, yeah, monarchy's not great, and then you'd say, okay, so what would you replace it with? And I would say, well, republicanism isn't great either, and neither is every government that's ever been, decided on by man, period, But I would say this though, as an American, okay. I don't think that you would be able to put Americans, because of the individualistic standards that have been put upon American culture for so long. Now, you could say it could change in a few generations, and yes, that could be true. Okay. But I just don't see how you would be able to fit in a monarchy, or let alone one, because when I think of monarchy and like the last one before Trump, and I'll talk about Trump for a minute and what Steve Bannon and Dugan were salivating over. Okay. But like the one beforehand, you could say is probably the Kennedy dynasty, right? That's the closest that we ever got in modern times. Right. But it didn't even come to fruition because RFK Jr. was never president, and so I just don't see Americans adopting. I don't think we can go back. Like, I'm not a fan of the divine right of man, but I'm also not a fan of the divine right of kings either. And nor do I think that's a perfect system of a government. And I don't think there is anyone for humans, period. Like, I know that's kind of a flawed. It's not really, it's not the most pragmatic approach. But it's just how I see it,
Oh, I did.
Does that make any sense?
That makes sense. I liked your thing on Duggan. I fucking hate that guy. I fucking hate him. Like, fuck that guy. He's a fucking Satanist. Like, I'm kind of a dick. The people's like, don't dance on the graves of your enemies. I was like, nah, I'm the opposite. Dance on the people, the wicked. I'm more the type of people get what's coming to them. Not like people get what's coming to them, but they
reap what you sow from a biblical perspective.
Yeah, you reap what you sow. So I like, it's like when I say I'm not like the richest man, but there's a good this is completely unrelated. But because I like to go on unrelated tangents.
That's fine. This is a discussion at this point.
Okay. But I say this approach is like, even if you have nothing, and someone once asked me this, is like, why did you give a homeless person who said they need money, they could use it to buy drugs? And I said, my priest said this to me. Very important point. I think all Christians watching this should take into heart. He said, imagine yourself in that situation, And imagine you're that person and you need that money to buy food. And imagine that person not giving it to you. And that's how I see it. Like, even if I had like the last $5 in my wallet, I'd give it to someone who, a homeless guy. Like, hey, I
Or
don't need
a
this.
homeless person, I'll buy you some food.
Yeah,
I'll buy you something to eat. I'll buy you something to drink if that's what you want.
I think that's, and that's what that's an unrelated tangent. But
Let me finish your thought, and then I'm gonna switch it up a little bit.
Okay. So when I say that, like, I don't believe there's such a perfect government and there's a perfect king. Like, I wish Trump is a 90s boomer Democrat. That's all he is. He's a 90s boomer
Good.
Democrat who
I
boomers
like
his way around. He boomers his way around things. It's like, oh wait, it's not the 1980s or 90s anymore. I thought it was. That's really what Trump really thinks that works. And honestly, that's my honest opinion of the man. But people think, oh, God, Emperor Trump. I was like, that's inaccurate. It would be, well, it would. I don't know what you would give Trump as a title.
They were going to call him God Emperor Trump, and they still might be if he returns.
Okay. But the point is, I'm not saying he'd be like the most boomer monarch ever.
Yeah, that is true. He would be. Or he could. But go ahead.
Yeah, but the point is when I say that America is not fundamentally opposed to monarchy and that America has monarchist traditions. My real principle and why I'm a monarchist, I used to be a really, really hardcore. I don't know if you're familiar with former legionnaires. Most people aren't.
No, I'm lost on that.
It's French legionnaires.
I know that, but I can only think of legionnaires. Or Legionnaire's disease.
Are you familiar with like? Shit, I'm just gonna stop mentioning in a war Romanian Christian National Socialists and.
All right, you've lost me there.
Okay,
I'm gonna show my American ignorance.
Okay, basically,
finish up your thing so I can pass it off.
Okay, sorry. I go on. All of my thoughts go into a correct direction. But when I was that, for a while, I would call myself a theocratic fascist. Inaccurate, because that's not what Caggiano actually believed. So reading more into Caggiano, I realized, oh wait, he's a monarchist and he's a fascist. Well, national. He called himself a lot of things. He was a very devout Orthodox Christian, confusing person. But looking back on it, I looked into it. I looked into monarchies, this is when I was becoming an Orthodox Christian and moving a lot away from National Socialist organizations. They're all trash. They're not feds.
It's better. Idiots. It's better for you. But I used to be when I was a New Ager, I was a white nationalist. So.
Oh, you were?
Yes, I was. But I became in an obby, yes, yeah. I thought I was a white Gnostic magician.
Now I really want to have on my podcast to talk about that.
But God saved me by His grace and through my faith. But
I've never actually ran into an esoteric.
All right. I'm because Kyle's just sitting here.
Let me just finish.
All right, go. You got 30 seconds, or I'm muting you.
Okay. Basically, so I moved towards the idea and I looked when Christianity was the most protected, I wouldn't say feared, but when Christianity was the dominant force guiding people to a moral good. It's the 7th, 16 and 1500s when monarchs had the primogeniture of rule and to make laws binding on their own subject. Okay, Jack, I'll stop.
All right, go ahead, Kyle.
Well, so I wanted Kyle to, because I wanted to bounce back. But so Kyle, I wanted to ask you kind of like what John brought up, because I saw that, like, I read all those Bible verses and it does so, and not to get into that, but so what would be your form that you would, so let's say we're going to say God, he advises against a monarchy. What's the alternative solution?
Well, I think, and here's the question, maybe Jack and Loyalist, I'll kind of, ask for your input on kind of, this structure of monarchy, right? Because I think whenever you bring up the term monarchy, you just think there's one person at the top telling everybody what to do. But I know there's a lot more to it than that. Like, for example, one of the passages I just read in the Bible about King Jehoshaphat, who was one of the good kings, he basically set up, I don't want to call it a republic or a democracy, but he had kind of a quasi group of judges, almost like a Supreme Court type system, where he kind of stratified the kingdom into, if people had concerns and problems, it's not just up to the king to solve it. It was, he's setting up all these regions, and I'm sure just inherently in all forms of government there's that kind of thing. But I think if you can have, and again, it's kind of the unanswerable question, but if you can have rulers like this that have the belief in God, right, that have that core belief, that have advisors that they take advice from and aren't just pushing their own way through, that's really the only way in my mind that the monarchical system works. But just from what I've seen in history, and obviously I don't know every example, Jack and Loyalist, I know you know a lot more about more of the recent, several past centuries of monarchies and how they worked. But, the perception you get, and mind you, these perceptions are put out there and may not always be 100% accurate in every case, is that whenever there's a king set up, it's either the person themselves views themselves as God, or the people view them as a god. So if there's a form of monarchical government where it's more of a blend between that and a republic, where there's more people coming to the table to fix these problems, I guess, for lack of a better term, that's kind of what I would say. But I'll also say too, what we've been saying this whole time, the idea of this, American government system we have. Yeah, you can vote and there's these committees and all this kind of stuff, but really, I think we all believe that there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes where there are certain families that are already pulling the strings anyway. So it's kind of already that monarchical family line type system anyways, although you don't really see it in the foreground. And maybe that way, with it being so hidden, is maybe why it's not working. I don't know. Just like I said, it's an unanswerable question. But I think in my own heart and mind, I believe in the monarchy of God and God the Father and in Jesus Christ. That's what I believe in my own heart. That's really the only one that I will serve and bow down to. Any other form of government just kind of falls short.
I think it's a very fair answer. So the reason why I even found Loyalist and started becoming a monarchist is every secret society, Adam Weishaupt, he in his letters that they found, he was writing to his buddies, and all they talked about was how the goal was to remove the monarchy and remove religion. So they infiltrated Freemasonry, and they were behind all these revolutions, from the French, the Bolshevik. And so this started again. That's literally what pushed me to monarchy was, well, they want this. They want no king. They will cause these wars to remove monarchies and institute a constitutional republic. Well, clearly there's something there. And so then I even thought of our American Revolution. These guys were Freemasonic, and not all of them, like we already kind of mentioned. But so it makes people question this: was this revolution to just continue with the plan of this removing religion and removing monarchies? And then last thing I'll say, which I want so in Adam Weishaupt's letters, I found this interesting too. He writes, it's not that he wants a constitutional republic. He wants an anarchy where there are no rulers. That's at least what he writes in his letters. And so I found that really interesting too, that the leader of, the face of the Illuminati was talking about how his goal was to have total chaos and anarchy. And I just found that I don't know. I found that very odd. But I don't know if, John, you have any thoughts, and we can go around. You can just add whatever you want. You can switch.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this a lot. Now you got to remember, Jack, at one time that I was considering monarchy as well,
yes.
myself. But then I snapped back. I was like, what am I doing? All right. So okay. So a couple of things. One, yes, I have issues with the founding fathers in the American Revolution. Obviously, just I have more issues with the French Revolution. They killed my ancestor, after all. But that's neither here nor there. They beheaded him. But still, nonetheless, there were Christians and there were Americans who fled persecution under the English kings, Puritans. Baptists. Now, granted, the Baptists also fled the Protestants, and they also fled the Catholic Church. They were getting killed by both the Protestants and the Catholic Church. Okay, but you know, you know, a lot of our you know, our ancestors came here to flee monarchical tyranny. Now, granted, what they fleed into, and the people that kind of picked them up and were like, "We'll save you with the divine right of man." You know, like, yes, they fell into another trap. Okay, I mean, it is what it is. All right, but you know, again, they came over here and they formed loosely knit colonies that were, some were stronger or under the crown and some were looser under the crown. Okay, and they tried to some tried to institute a separatist form of government, like Roger Williams, for example. So different states had their own ideas of how loyal they should be to the crown or not, or why, and some thought that they should not be loyal to the crown at all,
Oh,
but they
interesting.
weren't controlled like the founding fathers are concerned. They were just like, we're Christians, we want to be separate. It is what it is. Okay. So a lot of that comes from the Baptists and Anabaptists. If they just want to be separate, they want to be left alone, because because we are supposed to be in this world, but not of the world. Okay. So you know, so again, because of that, now I would assume the loyalists, since you are Orthodox Christian, you are not for the separation of church and state, right? I would assume, when I'm listening to your streams, you appear to be against the separation of church and state.
Very much so.
Okay.
I take what the founders say. I don't think they were for either. I think what they meant is they didn't. I think if they would have
Now,
said,
there were some founders that there were some.
I know. I think it's the modern interpretation.
Well, it depends, because Thomas Jefferson isn't. There. I mean, you had Roger Williams, you know, before.
Yeah,
Jefferson
I know. Yeah, you know, it's surprising that no one really knows who that is. I know who that is. He wasn't really the leader of the Regulators. Kind of was, kind of wasn't.
Well, I mean, as far as Williams is concerned, he was. I mean, I've read a lot of his sermons. I do respect him as a pastor. But he was head of the Rhode Island colony. And he was very much for the separation of church and state. Now, as a Baptist, for example, I believe in soul liberty, and that a man is accountable to God for his own belief of whether and his own sins of, for example, whether or not that he chooses through provisionism, through, you know, by God, the grace that God gives him, but by his own belief, his own faith, to be answered upon, you know, to God upon that to death, you know. And so since a person has their ultimate, you know, they have that soul liberty, you know, they have that accountability to God. You can't force someone to believe in God by the barrel of a gun. Okay. It just, I mean,
the Orthodox Christians don't either.
And so actually I disagree with Protestantism and Catholicism and a lot of that, but that's another discussion. All right. But yeah, but I do believe, because of the Apostolic Church and how you mentioned earlier, render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, render unto God's what is God's. There was this separation. There was this separatist that state should be influenced by the spreading of the gospel, by people becoming born again earnestly, okay, not at the barrel of a gun, okay,
right,
and by people living upright, moral Christian lives. That's what turns a society towards God and honoring God. And we have the example of Nineveh in the Bible, for example. Yes, Nineveh did later fall, but when Nineveh when Jonah was being a curmudgeon and didn't want to, you know, go to be a prophet to Nineveh, for example, but they did. Everybody, you know, sackcloth and ashes, including the king, and repented to the Lord, to the one true God, right? So through Christian living, through the spreading of the gospel, for people earnestly becoming born again and turning to God, a culture can you know, institute Christian values that way. Because like I myself, I'm against the New Apostolic Reformation Protestant kind of version of what they call "quote unquote" Christian nationalism that's being pushed by people like Andrew Torba so much now, because I think it's false. I think their version of it might even lead to the beast system if we're truly living in the times foretold in the book of Revelation. So if that's the case, which if I remember correctly, Orthodoxy would be considered partial preterist, right? As far as eschatology is concerned, the loyalists.
So I don't even know what word did you just use?
Did we lose him?
I don't know.
Sorry. No, I missed the last thing you said.
I would assume Orthodoxy eschatology is a partial preterist view, correct?
Predatorist?
Preterist, meaning everything has been fulfilled in the book of Revelation at 872 AD except for the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Oh, like the millennial reign's already happened. Is that what you're saying?
I think we could be during the millennial reign as the Orthodox Church is an all millennialist, yes.
I know we're not. Sorry, I'm not familiar with Protestant. Look, I
don't consider Baptist to be Protestant either. That's a whole other discussion. That's a whole other discussion.
I'm not too familiar with that. I know we have an argument with the non-Chalcedonians or the Nicene Creed. Man, I really wish. You know what, Jack? I really wish I had my co-host right now because he could answer this because he's.
Dude, it's okay.
Yeah, this is one of the ones I don't have an answer to.
That's all right. That's good. It's good to admit you don't have an answer.
Yeah, I don't know everything. Lord knows I don't, brother. This is just a friendly discussion.
Yeah,
you know.
Hey, John. Let me ask you. John, let me ask you this. I know we've talked about the render to Caesar what is Caesar's, but I can't remember the passages offhand, but I believe there's passages from the Apostle Paul in Romans that talks about either directly or indirectly about not necessarily opposing the government in an act of rebellion, but choosing to like we've been saying, set yourself aside or push back on certain things. Do you know what I'm talking about, or am I off base on
no,
that
you're not
comment?
off base at all. It's a discussion. I see it as in the affairs of the government or the affairs of the government, meaning there's certain things I like this posted speed limit, for example. I'm not gonna go
God,
80.
no, God, you know what? We should take the approach of the crazy Articles of Confederation. I'm just traveling. God said I'm just traveling. Fuck you and your licenses.
But see, I'm not gonna go like 30 miles an hour and be like, that's right, screw you. Because then I won't be a reflective of a good Christian if they pull me over and I've gone 50 miles an hour, and they see the cross necklace that I have hanging down from my mirror, right?
The fish, like, the fish bumper sticker.
What was he doing? So there are times that we do rebel against government. Okay, for example, if the government asks me to break any of God's commandments or the two commandments that Jesus gave to sum those up, right? So if the government was like, I need you to deny God. No, I'm not denying God. You're gonna have to kill me. Okay, and that's exactly what happened to these saints throughout history, and we are so I hate to use this term, privileged in the United States to have the comfort where most of us are not having to make that decision, but that decision might happen in the future. Okay. And so, again, for example, another thing would be is if the government asks me to harm myself or to harm another person, okay, that would be another example where you could disobey government. Okay. But those are the two prime examples. For example, still pay your taxes. In my opinion, other Christians may disagree with me on this. Okay. And still live by the laws of the land when they're unfair. I mean, if they're outright causing you to sin or do gross forbidden, gross sin forbidden, you have every right to say no.
You have every right to have an armed revolution against communists.
Well, I would disagree with that, but it is what it is. So,
yeah,
because I would say the Roman Empire in and of itself was very, very debauched. Very debauched. You had pederastry and living out.
I've been told by very reliable sources that paganism is based and its ancestor worship, and that the gods aren't real, they're a figment and a representation or something. I've been told by reliable sources of people who all seem to be really into German LARPing.
Yes,
Just
very
German.
much so. Just German LARPing. People that also want to say that God and Jesus are myths, and the pagans were based. So I was watching Doctor Who. I'm not proud to admit that the other day. I
Oh,
just happened to
Doctor
be
Who's a
watching
great show.
it.
One with
Oh, it
Matt
used to
Smith
be.
is
It
good.
used to
It
be. It's
used to
not
be
now.
like
Yeah,
the
with
newer
Matt
than
Smith.
after it sucks now.
But I was
Yeah.
watching Peter Capaldi, okay, and it was an episode where they showed the Roman Empire and his companion Bill, okay, who is a lesbian, okay. So they're at the Roman Empire and they're showing how base the Roman Empire is, all right, how base they are, and they're like, talking about how this Roman centurion is based because he likes men, and the white Roman centurion was like, well, I'm not like him. I just like women. I'm not special. I'm heterosexual and I'm not special.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
It's like, okay, so when people think of the Roman Empire, the pagan Roman Empire, all right, it
No.
was because of the
Well-
of people becoming born again and leaving that paganism behind, and by people through regeneration becoming Christ-like and the spreading of the gospel and all that, it kept that stuff.
What?
It tampered it down,
What?
and
what-
throughout
no,
history it's tampered it down too.
Well,
But the
no,
problem
no,
is, I think
no,
we're coming
no,
to the
no.
end times where it
You-
can't be tampered down anymore.
No.
so.
You
Right.
gotta realize, according to the Romans, the gayest thing you can ever do is go down on a woman. That's what they've been told.
Really?
So okay, I should stop saying degenerate things.
We should read Paul when he's talking to Titus, and he talks about the island of Crete, because we get the word Cretan from, because Crete was well known for pedestry and Roman soldiers on their holidays going over there and molesting and raping young boys. Okay, so that's where we get the term Cretans. And so Paul's like, they're lazy and they're bums and they're degenerates to Titus. All right, so just remember that. All right.
Yeah, but one of the things like an orthodoxy, and I also find this is interesting because you're very anti-Doug, and I don't like Doug either. My co-host kind of likes him. I'm trying to talk him out of it. It's going, but one of the important things is that I this is just a side note. I find it funny that like when Protestants and Catholics defend Russia, because if you started preaching baptism in Russia, they may be basically neo-Bolsheviks with a thin Orthodox veneer, but the only thing they do that like some Orthodox Christians would agree with is that you would be arrested for doing that. You would be immediately thrown in prison for trying to spread anything besides Eastern Orthodoxy.
Wow, really? If I went over there and started preaching,
yep, you'd be arrested.
Uh-huh.
You'd be arrested.
And even though I just saw like a statistic though that's like definitely like only
you were like in the 2003. There's a good documentary on it. A lot of Catholics were thrown out. A lot of Protestants were thrown out.
The Catholics, I understand.
But dude, like only 17% of the
Russia
Russian
is not very Orthodox.
goes to church.
Like it's more of it's like the head of the Orthodox Church in Russia now is a former KGB agent.
Yeah, Kirill telling people
like
literally
that
if they die on the battlefield, they go to heaven like it's Valhalla. Not their faith in God or Jesus or their belief. If they die on the battlefield, they go to heaven like it's Valhalla.
We don't really believe in that. I mean, we believe that you should, if you die and you're baptized and you go to confession and you're a good Christian, you go to heaven. That's Orthodox or Trinitarians, and Kirill, like El Pataforos in America, are both extremely out of line and been condemned by most of the. Because like I love when people sit here and defend Kirill's like, we're not Catholic. We're not Catholic. We don't like if Pope like Kirill said, I want to fuck kids. I'd be like, yeah, no, you're not. Please, like we're just gonna you know, when Orthodox Christians and different jurisdictions do shit like that, we just our approach is the rest of the Orthodox world just condemns them and ignores them until that person is removed. So you know that's my solution to Kiro and pedophiles. Just you should condemn them, and you should ignore them until you get removed. They removed, or as I like to call it, they should be purged. But I got a bunch of commie Orthodox cultural Marxists didn't like that I said that. So you know.
No, you got anything to get on here? You got anything to say? You look like you're nodding.
All right. Well, I was gonna ask. So, and we can like open this up. So if there's no, we've talked, there is like no perfect system, right? There is no perfect system, but what can be done to change if we kept the system?
I forgot to answer the question about monarchy.
Go ahead, man.
Okay, I got really off track.
All right, well, stay on track.
I do have autism. Please be patient. Should I have autism? But when it comes to conspiracy, Kyle, the question is like what you were talking about, a system of regionalism that existed in monarchy. Like Nicholas II had basically authority over, I guess you would say, major imperial decisions, but the vast majority of Russia during his imperial reign was mainly governed by the regional. There was regional monarchs. There was also regional leaders, elected councilmen. It's funny because under like monarchs, every system existed in that government. So when you're talking about like between republicanism and monarchy, that would be something like Kaiser Wilhelm II or the German system of monarchy, and that would be what that would be like. There's an elected parliament, but the Kaiser can still dissolve the parliament if he so chooses, and just tell them to screw off for a bit and seize emergency powers. That would be the answer to your question. And that monarch himself, unless you're talking about Shintoism or a few forms of Eastern monarchies, and I think a few European monarchs, most monarchs were never viewed as God. They were viewed as someone who is serving the divine will of God, but never God. That's more like Eastern Europe or like Persia,
like Old Testament type stuff. Yeah,
yeah. And most of those people were always, when they said that, they were struck down. Gene Bone makes it very clear that you're not above the laws of God and nature in his book, 6 Books of the Commonwealth. And as for the books, the questions, let me just look through my books. A good book if you want to know like what actual feudalism, The Rise of Sons, The History of Social Mobility. That's more of a book on the history of just social mobility and feudalism. And Life in a Medieval Village. Those are actually good books if you want an actual feel of what monarchy was like to live under. So yeah, that's the thing with like, and what I said earlier about, you said earlier, Josh, sorry, I'm talking really fast. I tend to do that. If I'm hard to understand, please let me know.
No, you're good, dude. Go.
Yeah, but what people would say about America, like the early Americas, was directly under the monarchs. It wasn't until much later that America started being under the parliament. It's funny because you can, if you read another book, I have another book. I just have so many book recommendations. Eric Nelson's The Royalist Revolution. His claim isn't that America's founding was monarchist. It's that a lot of the founders were themselves monarchists and believed in just giving George III his right back to rule over the colonies, or the concept that it was a war against Parliament, not George III. George III was actually very sick throughout most of the American Revolution and wasn't actually in charge of most of the policies. Most of the shitty policies were the Parliament's fault.
Yes. And that I've read that in the one Jesuit book, how he wanted to remove that tax on tea. Parliament said, no, we're going to up the tax on tea. And he kept trying to pull back, which I think is an interesting. And so I also wanted to say you, John, you've been in the conspiracy world much longer than I have. But when I first came across this idea of it was the book Freemasons Behind the Revolutions, when they started like kind of these
a
started.
lot of this, like George Washington was barely a lot of these people exaggerate that to sell books. In my opinion, there was a lot less.
I think I think Washington.
No, Washington was somewhat. I wouldn't say like the level of like that the people say that it's Freemasons. Not to say that Freemasons didn't have a lot of political power. There's a reason that a certain mustache man really hated them and threw them in prison along with communists. It's like, yeah, I don't like these people either. It's another thing that people a lot of forget about the Third Reich. They persecuted all the Freemasons. And the same thing with Russia. Like there was a few Freemason czars, but the later czars just said, yeah, you're not allowed to be a Freemason. Like in Orthodox Christianity, I would be in bad standing with the church if I entered was a Mason. I'm not allowed to do that.
And some Protestant denominations or even Baptists, you would be allowed, and some you wouldn't. But what were you going to say, Jack? Finish your thought.
I was just saying that it was interesting that I never came across that idea of monarchy after, I listened to all these podcasts, all these people like you that are so well informed and all, they talk about how corrupt the government is. But that also is another thing that I felt like there's something to this solution of having a strong central leader that is moral, because it's never brought up as a solution for anything.
Well, and I'll say too, to that end, when you look at now, not that it's the arbiter of truth, but then when you look at, popular media, books, movie, TV, what have you, 9 times out of 10, it's always the monarchy is always the villain, right?
Exactly.
Look at that movie, The Patriot. Look at Braveheart. I mean, that show, The Crown. I think that's the only one that shows the monarchy.
About Braveheart.
Just let Kyle finish.
And I'm saying, I'm not saying they're all like historically accurate or what have you, but I think when they always want to make the monarchy the villain, I think, the more we're talking about this stuff, it makes you, not that I agree with the methodology, but it makes you wonder why that's the narrative being pushed.
Yes, agreed. Go ahead, Loyals.
Oh, well, the funny thing is about Braveheart is that they were rebelling to install a Scottish king. It wasn't it's like, yeah, this is an inaccurate movie. The Scottish were really, really Catholic and really several times kept trying to throw the Protestants. They kept trying to kill each other, and the Catholic population wanted. It was a mix. There was really Protestant absolutists. There's actually a lot of Protestant absolutists, but mainly the mainstream nowadays is Catholic and Orthodox. Like a lot of my followers, are Catholic. But I've said,
the Catholics would want a central figure, wouldn't they? Boom, yes.
Wait, I got a soundboard. Wait.
Yeah, there you go.
Well,
there you go.
Oh,
So.
I'm outnumbered here. I need to call. I make the joke. It's like, so you're Orthodox and you're like a very I wouldn't say prominent. There's not that many monarchists on YouTube. I mean, there used to be the Mad Monarchist. And he was Catholic.
I mean, I have a really good Catholic friend. I read old magazines, and he would be considered a monarchist. I mean, I don't know. Again, this is kind of like mental masturbation. It's like, what's your favorite form of government? I mean, it's sad, but it is what it is. What are any of us going to do to affect any of
we us four right now? We are forming the vanguard of the right wing revolution. Well, I don't know what a right-wing revolution would call each other. Not comrade. That's kind of communist.
And so I guess we need to get out there and spread the gospel and help our fellow man. I think that would do more than.
Yeah.
There you go.
So
I agree.
That's the point, right? I think we all would agree that we're like John said, mental masturbation. I feel like we're talking about Ancapistan, but the thing that I think we could change is this morality of the nation. That's like the only thing that we can have control over is how we act and inspire others. And if you had a moral population, you wouldn't even need any form of government. But just like how people don't put their shopping cart away,
and I morally fail a lot too. But as the quote,
we all do.
Yeah, we all do. To quote, was it Thomas Jefferson or John Adams who said, if the country isn't Christian, the Constitution doesn't matter.
It's interesting that you're quoting a Unitarian
Ooh.
Universalist.
Hey,
Wait, is
I
that a
don't-
real quote?
yeah,
That's a
that's a real
beautiful
quote.
But he is a Unitarian
Yeah.
Universalist, though. So
Yeah, he's
look,
not.
I-
He doesn't believe in like the magic part of
They-
the Bible.
yeah.
no, that was Thomas Jefferson. Adams is Unitarian.
Oh, I thought you said
Yeah,
Jefferson. My fault.
the founders were all degrees of like weird forms of Christian. They were all Christian. Like the concept that they were all these secular humanists is a myth. They were all very
But
Christian.
they were not Christian. No, I would disagree with you on that. Thomas Paine was a Satanist and a
Horrible guy.
Luminist. Thomas Jefferson denied, it was his own Jeffersonian Bible, denied the divinity of Jesus Christ and the miracles. Benjamin Franklin was an Illuminist in and of himself.
Banging,
John Adams was a
prostitutes.
Unitarian Universalist. Now, there were founding fathers who were Christian men who were upright. For example, would be Patrick Henry. Okay, but majority of them or many of them, that was not the case. A lot of them were. I mean, I remember when I was a New Ager in college, I was reading Thomas Paine's Common Sense and thinking this is one of the best things ever written in history. And of course, we had the Georgia Guidestones, which was Common Sense renewed, right?
Ooh.
With that, right? So
John, where were you like a few months ago?
I was born again Christian. I've been a born again Christian for about.
No. I'm saying like where were you? You say the Georgia
politically?
No, Georgia Guidestones. Like.
Oh, he's saying, did you blow him up, John?
Oh no. But I mean, I that's the thing is like I don't know, like I don't revere any of the founding fathers. Like I mean, I respect Patrick Henry, but it's not like when I look back at the founding fathers, like idolize no man, and none of them were. And the system that they left from, which you would say would be an English monarchy.
Nope.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, it was hilarious because before we started this, it was like I can't read from the King James, so instead I'm going to read from the Geneva Bible, right? So if you need me to go back further, I can't go back further, But I just
Let's see King James.
King James was based, but I don't know.
It was interesting you bring up Thomas Paine because he, like how you said, he was a Satanist. They like recruited him to help write propaganda for the French Revolution.
Yeah. And they kept asking him, like, there were people literally coming to him preaching the gospel, and he was turning them away. And on his deathbed, he was like, "Don't let anybody tell you that I came to the Lord or I believe in God or don't like with venom." He was like, "Don't let anybody tell you that I believe in God." Okay, because the God of the Old Testament is still wicked because he had, Gnostic demiurge beliefs, So like he was like, there was a woman supposedly that like, I think she like acted like a nerd or a maid or something that managed to get in there to like preach the gospel to him. And he was like so mad about that. He was like, "How dare this lady?" Like Thomas Paine was wicked. He was a wicked man.
Yeah.
And he was a libertarian degenerate, and so was Benjamin Franklin. Let's be real here. All right.
Well, I'm very anti-French Revolution. I believe
they killed my ancestors. So what can I say?
Yes. Then that's why you should. And that's why you should never be a Bonapartist. Orleansism forever. Eternal Orleans. I really do need to make a video on the whole concept of Bonapartism because fuck that guy. Fucking liberal Satanist Freemason.
Well, his brother was.
No. All. A lot of my siblings aren't Christian, but I can't. If going around hitting them with the Bible is not going to change their mind. Also, I don't think
Jack,
a lot.
all you got to think about Napoleon is hidden hand, brother. Hidden hand.
I know this is. I'm a fan of Napoleon, so my rebuttal
I'm a
would
Napoleon
be
disrespecter.
Why would Napoleon remove the central banks, remove usury from his country if he didn't like the people? That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh, so he did one thing. So did Andrew Jackson. Doesn't make him our guy.
Our guy is Andrew Jackson.
I do like Andrew Jackson as well.
Andrew Jackson. I mean, he may have had some issues, but he was. I think him. He embodied the American spirit of how a president should act. I'm going to party with the people.
He's amazing.
I'm going to have massive parties with the people. That's how the king, like King James also, I think, liked doing that. and the founder of a lot of friends of mine. I forget what they're called. They have like, I guess John, you would know. They have like a cornucopia as like the symbol with a goat, with like kind of like go with a Christian flag.
I have no idea what you're talking about there. You completely lost me on that one. And Andrew Jackson was a Mason, if I remember correctly.
What?
Yes,
No way,
if I
dude.
remember correctly, yes.
I don't believe it.
And I mean,
I don't believe it.
But I would say no president's ever been for us ever, except for Trump. He's our guy.
Nice.
But so Kyle, what do you think? Are we wrong here with this discussion? Was Napoleon our guy? Was he not our guy?
I'm gonna defer to you. You guys are the historical experts. Some of this goes way over my knowledge.
Look,
I'm listening and I'm soaking it all in. I appreciate all the comments. I have no
Nicholas
dog in the
II was definitely our guy. Nicholas II was our guy. Let's see, who else is our guy? I mean, we're not allowed to say that guy because you can't say that guy, his name in good company, and he screwed up a lot. Churchill.
I would say the guy in good company that you mentioned was not our guy because of the whole Anunnaki and the whole
that stuff is Allied propaganda.
Getting the Kabbalah from the mountain Jews. That's one for you. If you want to talk about that discussion, we can talk about that.
Fair, we also told him to get bed from Mount Athos. He's like, can I have some of this? I'm gonna take this stuff. Hey, you're the guardian of Mount Athos. Go away now.
So here we can like kind of wrap it. I don't know if anybody have any other extra. We'll like go around, do final thoughts, we'll do that. So Kyle, you can lead us off. I guess to think about for your final thoughts. We already talked about what form of government. Where do you hope to see the country goes? How would you do it? We'll go.
I just want to see people turn to Christ. I want to see people believe in Christ as the monarch and not any earthly leaders, whether it be republic or otherwise. That's really all I have. It's more of a spiritual monarchy is what I attain to, and what I hope others can attain to as well. I'm not necessarily somebody who wants to just shut myself away from society and go off like the Amish. That would be nice, but for one, I don't have the skills to do that, and for two, I would have no idea what I'm doing. But at the same time, I just don't really want to contribute to the political discourse on either side of the aisle at this point. Not that I'm not really here to like encourage people to do that or not to do. Everybody can make their own decision on what they think. But anybody who's a Christian who believes in Christ needs to just really strongly think about the people that they are supporting. I'm not saying don't support this person or support this. Do whatever you want. You can do whatever you want, but you make sure that God and Christ are the number one in your life. Because if they're not, you're going to be led astray by darkness or false light or what have you. So that's kind of my 2 cents. And I appreciate all the discussion from everybody. You guys are all way more well-versed in a lot of this historical stuff. It's been really great for me gaining a lot of great information, knowledge from you guys. So thanks for having me.
Well, Kyle, and I want to say like 3 people in the chat liked your spiritual monarchy. So that's a very nice phrase. I like that. That's very good.
And my last thing is, I was reading my kids a book tonight about, the greatest king of all time. From the neighborhood of make believe, we have King Daniel the Kind. He was allowed to be king for a day, and he chose to be kind, and that was the correct thing to do. So, but remember, he lives in the neighborhood of make believe. So just keep that in mind.
Loyalist, final thoughts.
I thought this was going to be a lot hostile. This was a lot of fun. I thought this would be a lot of screaming. So yeah, it's been fun. We discussed a lot of stuff. I think I derailed the conversation. Sorry about that.
Nah.
No. It's been fun. I think a lot was discussed. I think, as I say, as someone. A lot of libertarians have told other libertarians to live in Ancapistan in their head, and I seek to make monarchists not live in.
Monarchistan?
No, it's more that the American Anglo whatever will advocate the American kingdom in their head and seek to. I think you need to lead by moral example. You need to build up your local communities, and that's the only thing you really can do for now, because and people, I know, John, you've watched some of my podcasts. I get like really into.
I have. How did you know? How did you know? I had to prepare. So
I watched some of your stuff, and I'm sorry if you read through it and you get this vibe that I'm some sort of. Some of them I come off like a reasonable person. Some of them I just come off.
I thought some of them you were trying to be an edgelord in my.
I like what? Yeah, certain people like I have like calm discussions with the libertarians, and with like what I have like my friends who are like monarchists or like fascist, and I kind of turned into this edgelord revolutionary. Like we will storm the people like Caggiano. We will crush the liberals under our 1,000 marching boots. Once more into the breach, my friends. But yeah, I'm a pretty calm person most of the time. It's been fun. It's been interesting. And I learned a lot. I deeply respect. I think your perspective wasn't one of ignorance. Isn't one of I think one of hostile disagreement. It's more we're trying to. This is what actual debates and discussions are supposed to be like.
Yes.
Not like.
Oh, I like that. Nice.
Like not one guy trying to scream the other guy's some form of homosexual, or he's
didn't the Apostle Paul say debates are futile, if I remember correctly? Didn't he say that?
Maybe. But,
I think so.
I think most debate. In all honesty,
resistance is futile. Also.
I think debates between like honest right wingers or like people like if someone like Hop. And let's say I can't think of a living monarchist right now. And like what's his name? Oh, Charles Colomb sat down. They'd actually have an interesting debate like we're having. But when people like Fuentes and like
ew,
I agree, ew. But like and like Keith Wood sit down and shit. It's
just
gross. Yeah, commie, gross. Gross. I hate all those people. I hate the Dugganists just as much as you do.
But you gotta pray for them. No hate. No hate.
No hate. Yeah, whatever. It's Confront Evil with Force. Read that book. It's a good book. But yeah, it's like when we sit down, we're actually talking about where we disagree. When those guys sit down, the both. I don't see what those people disagree on, and it's like they're both dishonest people.
Yeah, very much so. I agree.
And John, you're
okay. My closing thoughts.
Yes, your closing thoughts.
Kyle knows more than he wants to let himself.
He does, dude.
To say he wants to be humble more than the rest of us here on the stream, but he did very well. And
I brought up no Star Wars also, so I'm very.
That is true. You still need to shoehorn one in.
Oh yeah, I got one. I got one last one. Yeah.
Okay, but I will say that you were more coherent than I was. I was just a rumbling mess. But I enjoyed this very much so. I guess to reference back what I said, Titus 3:9, the Apostle Paul said, but avoid foolish controversies, genealogies, dissensions, and quarrels about the law, for they are unprofitable and worthless. And actually, there's one point he discusses about debates too and vain philosophies. Of course, that was specifically trying to argue with Hebrew roots people. But there is no perfect form of government, in my opinion, except for the theocracy that will be coming in the literal millennial kingdom, which will be the reign of God the Father and Jesus Christ. And hopefully as saints, that will be one that we will be able to take a part of with him. Of course, he will always have lead. He will always have leadership of the right hand of God the Father. But it's still that's something to look forward to. But until then, we're not going to have any form of government, as it always has been, will be corrupt. It will be 100% corrupt in some shape or form. And so, though I have issues with the modern day revolutions, specifically the French and Bolshevik revolutions, more than the American Revolution, I still believe that the what we have now, and I do believe in Revelation 2, the world will continue to get worse. It's not going to get better. Like, if we're going towards the end times, if we're coming into the Revelation, the birth pangs have been since Jesus is crucified on the cross, then it's going to if we are living in the end days, it will progressively get worse. There is no, you can't, the door of the ark is closing. God's closing that door. There's nothing that can be done at that point. But that doesn't mean that we still don't preach the gospel, that we still don't live Christian lives, that we still don't, expose the unfruitful deeds of darkness. We're supposed to do all those things. We're called to do all those things by God the Father and Jesus Christ in loving servitude to Him. And so, it's tough. Things are going to get tough. The world is going to get worse. Things are going to get tougher. I agree with Kyle that we're supposed to cling to the Lord. We're not supposed to put any man above God as a form of idolatry, which many people are doing with their quote unquote God Emperor Trump, which Bannon wants so much. He salivates over the idolatry of Donald Trump because Bannon is a Satanist. And so, a chaos magician. So, in closing, there is no perfect form of government there, because men are flawed. Original sin does play a lot of part in that, or the ultimate part in that. And the only true perfect form of government will be when God the Father and Jesus Christ are ruling, completely during the millennial kingdom, or in the new earth and new Jerusalem at the end of recorded time. And so until then, Godspeed and fear only God.
I love it, dude. No, this was a great. I wasn't like everyone said. This was a lot of fun, and basically, we all don't know what the system is. We all know there is no perfect system, but I really enjoyed hearing everybody's thoughts. So thank you guys for doing this. Real quick, or I'll put your link. We'll just do your. I'll put your links in the show notes since we did them at the beginning. If you're all right, but I'll be live tomorrow. Everybody, 8:30. Don't know who's on yet or what I'm doing, but if you guys want to stop in, I'll be live tomorrow. So thanks for watching. We had 27 people at most here tonight. So thank you guys. Much love. God bless. Take care. Peace.